As the war raged in Europe from 1914 to 1916, taking the lives of more than a million people in Europe, the Americans watched it all with trepidation. And a debate grew over how prepared America should be. This section will explore this pre- preparation debate and also conclude with the election of 1916, the presidential election. Wilson had had a lot of trouble trying to ensure neutral trading rights on the high seas and trying to negotiate or mediate his peace. And he worried as well that the United States simply wasn't prepared enough if somehow it should be dragged into the conflict. So Wilson in November 1915 proposed a military authorization bill that would increase the Army to 400,000 soldiers from its present 100,000 and would also incorporate the National Guard into the overall defense structure. That would allow them to be called up for extended service if necessary. Wilson's proposal angered many in his own Democratic Party, which included many die-hard isolationists who feared that a military increase would mean that the United States was getting ready to enter the war. Opposition was led by many Southerners and Westerners, including House Majority Leader Claude Kitchen of North Carolina. Knowing that Republicans supported increased defense spending and that it was popular among many Americans, Wilson worried that his party would take a hit in the 1916 elections and that he might even not be reelected. The result was a compromise, the National Defense Act of 1916, which increased the regular Army to just over 200,000 men, incorporated the National Guard at a higher level of authorized men, and permitted the War Department to establish volunteer training camps, including the new ROTC. Congress also passed the Naval Expansion Act of 1916, which provided for a large increase in spending, a 5-year building program to be completed in 3 years. The law provided more than $500 million for 10 battleships, 6 battle cruisers, 30 subs, and 50 destroyers. Looking back, in retrospect, it was lucky that Wilson was able to pass the legislation. The anti-preparedness Democrats, fearing an American entrance into the war, were able to exact a cost for passing the increased defense spending. To pay for the spending, they passed the Revenue Act of 1916. The legislation doubled the income tax rates, most notably at the higher income levels, a reflection of many Democrats' belief that the wealthy industrialists were pushing for the war because their industries would, make money. The top income bracket rate went from 7% to 15%, while the lowest went from 1% to 2%. Again, a reflection of the sense that the wealthy would benefit, the legislation imposed an excess profit tax and strengthened an estate tax. It was, in a sense, a victory for what the populace had been demanding since the Omaha Platform in the 1890s. Realizing the ongoing difficulties of neutral trading in the merchant marine fleet, Congress also sought to prepare for possible war by passing the Merchant Marine Act of 1916. The law created the United States Shipping Board to develop and regulate ocean trading vessels engaged in commerce under the flag of the United States. It would also operate the merchant marine ships directly owned by the government. To start getting prepared for possible war, Congress also created the Council of National Defense in 1916. Its job was to coordinate the production and distribution of the industrial, agricultural, and financial resources that might be needed in time of war. In essence, in 1916, the Council began initial plans to mobilize the economy for possible war. The Council in early 1917 ordered states to create their own councils of defense, and when the U.S. eventually entered the war later in 1917, the Council of National Defense created a number of new agencies to further organize the mobilization. When the November 1916 presidential elections arrived, Wilson faced the Republican Charles Evans Hughes, who served on the United States Supreme Court. Most Republicans tended to be more pro-British and pro-interventionist, most notably the former President Teddy Roosevelt. Hughes tried to argue that Wilson had adequately prepared the United States for a war, but Congress's recent actions had shielded Wilson from that line of political attack. Moreover, it arguably played into Wilson's campaign slogan that he had kept America out of the war. In the end, Wilson won by over 600,000 votes, but a narrow victory in the Electoral College, 277 to 254. Wilson, it appeared, gained from the way the Germans had appeared to cave in his demands about submarine warfare, most recently with the Sussex Pledge, which is only 6 months before the election. Many Americans didn't want to go to war, and for many, Wilson seemed to be both firm and impartial. This concludes the section on Americans' preparedness debate and the election of 1916.